Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ArtsLB Community Project Grant Technical Assistant Workshop. We will begin shortly. Today we have with us the grants team, Lisa DeSmit, Director of Programs, Sergio Alon Diaz, Programs Associate, and Jude DeLuna, Programs Associate. We would like to recognize that we work on the unceded, traditional, and sacred lands of the Tongva, Quiche, Akshaman, and Chumash, and the many other Indigenous groups who call these grounds home. We honor and extend our gratitude to all of the original people still living in this region. Before we get started, rename your video panel. You can use your first name and organization or your social media handle. You can use the three dots in the top right-hand corner of your video panel. You can also find in the participants list, click your name, select more, and select rename. You can turn on your video. This helps create a good environment, and so everyone can put a face to the name. Please make sure you place yourself on mute when you are not speaking. Use the chat to communicate with hosts if you need assistance. Feel free to use the reaction buttons. They are on the bottom portion of the panel. You can also find the captions on the bottom portion of the panels. Locate the three dots, click captions, and click show captions. Our mission at the Arts Council for Long Beach cultivates the physical, social, and economic characteristics of Long Beach neighborhoods by nurturing and enlivening the arts. The vision at the Arts Council for Long Beach envisions a thriving Long Beach that benefits from universal participation in the arts. An ArtsLB overview: we serve individuals, groups, and organizations through advocacy, arts education, public art, and grant making within the city of Long Beach. We practice profound inclusion as a collaborator and convener for the benefit of all communities.
Thank you, Judy. I appreciate that intro. I'll go ahead and get us started off with today's agenda. We'll be going over some of our annual grants programs, the Professional Artist Fellowship, the Operating 1 and 2, but we'll be going into depth today with the Community Project Grants. We'll also be discussing how our funds are dispersed here at the Arts Council. Pertaining to the Community Project Grant, we want to make sure that everyone understands the eligibility, the evaluation criteria, so that you can keep that in mind as you craft your responses for the application steps, and very importantly, the artistic documentation, which will allow the panelists to really see your programming as an organization and what you actually envision for your project for this grant. And we'll hold some time at the end for any questions that anybody might have. So as I mentioned, a few of the grants that the Arts Council for Long Beach administers is the Professional Artist Fellowship and the Operating Grant. The Professional Artist Fellowship honors living Long Beach artists who work, live, or actively create here in Long Beach and have produced artworks within the past 3 years. And this is a very community-centric grant, and we want to make sure that the artists who are honored by this fellowship have a deep impact. The Operating Grant is aimed towards arts and cultural organizations who aim to collect, preserve, present, and/or commission any artworks of regional significance. Operating Grant 1 is eligible for organizations who have a budget of $250,000 or more, and Operating Grant 2 is for organizations who have a budget of $1 million or more. We also offer our quarterly microgrants, which are for projects, but as well as professional development. If you'd like to learn more about these programs a little bit more in depth, and as well as their deadlines, any other guidelines, you could go ahead and check out the links that Jude is dropping in the chat. And as far as the Community Project Grant growth, the Arts Council partners with arts and cultural organizations who support artistic, cultural, and arts education projects here in Long Beach. We definitely want to make sure that the organizations who are applying understand what the program is and how to use those funds and make sure that their programming is a success at the end of the grants. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Lisa, who will be discussing more of the grants, its eligibility, and what's required.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining our workshop on the community project grant. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the eligibility is for this grant. And so this grant is really for arts, cultural, and historical organizations that are here headquartered in Long Beach, based in Long Beach. And it's for nonprofits that have their 501c3 status, or you can apply with a fiscal sponsor, and there are some requirements for the fiscal sponsorship. So the organization that's applying definitely has to be headquartered here in Long Beach, must be headquartered in Long Beach and doing programming in Long Beach. But the fiscal sponsor can be either located in LA County or Orange County, and they must meet the following requirements. The organization that's applying needs to have at least 2 years of arts or cultural programming in Long Beach. So it needs to be definitely programming taking place here in Long Beach. Needs to use qualified artists or professionals, arts administrators, and program planning and delivery, and needs to have confirmed programming schedule and secured venues. And this is for the fiscal year. We work on a fiscal year, not a calendar year. So this particular grant is going to be for the fiscal year starting October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. So that's the program year that there needs to be projects taking place. So this application is for that grant period. So when you're filling out the application, please keep in mind our fiscal year, which is the program year that this program is for, October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. And then the organization must use disciplines that include visual, performing, literary, audio, media, and or folk and traditional arts. We are pretty open to the definition of creative, but want to make sure it falls into one of these categories. If you have questions about that, please reach out to us and we can help clarify what that means. So how is funding determined? How are we deciding who gets funded and who doesn't? So what's going to happen first is everybody's going to submit their applications. Then the Arts Council staff is going to look over everything, make sure that everybody who's applied is eligible, meets those requirements. The application is complete. There's nothing missing from the application. For example, if an organization applies for an event that's happening September 29th of 2024, that is not going to be eligible. So that application will not move forward in the process. Or there's an organization that's applying that's not headquartered in Long Beach or doesn't have 2 years of arts experience, that application will not move forward. We're going to be looking at all of that, making sure everything is complete in the application. There may be some follow-up emails if we have questions about things. And so we'll review everything before it goes to the panel. We will be conducting outreach and a call for panelists. We're looking for regional professionals and we really look for a balanced panel that has representation from all over the region, different genres of art. So we want to make sure there's a very balanced panel. We do a lot of work in the recruitment process for these panelists. There are 5 panelists on each panel, 1 board member, and then 4 community members. And so these are not Arts Council staff, not Arts Council board. They're outside community members who are making the decision-making on this application and scoring it. They will pre-score the applications, and then we will meet and go over all the applications, review them, and we'll take an average score from all the panelists, and that's how we determine the funding levels and who is awarded. We do use a scoring rubric, and based on the percentage, the average, that's how funding is determined. So for example, 90% and above is considered an A, so that application will most likely get full funding and goes down from there based on the percentages. So once the panel convenes and those recommendations are made by the panel, the recommendations get reviewed by the allocations committee, and then it will be reviewed by the board of directors, and the board of directors will ratify the funding levels and make those approved recommendations. Then we wait until we receive our contract from the city of Long Beach. The city does not pass their budget until September. So we, as we're doing these grant panels, they're usually happening sometime in August. We submit these recommendations to the city. And then there's this waiting period that happens. We're waiting for our contract with the city. We're waiting to finalize what the funding amounts are. So there may be some changes and back and forth, hopefully not. And so usually, generally, you'll hear back between November and February of the later on that year or the following year. We do try and get those notifications out as quickly as possible and do recognize that the grant period is starting in October. Unfortunately, that's just the way that the funding is with the city and with our fiscal year. So what are these panelists looking at? How are they scoring these applications? What is that evaluation criteria? So there's 3 different categories for evaluation with a total of 30 points. The first category is artistic merit. And this is where Sergio is going to be going into more detail about the artistic documentation. So that's a very important component of the application. We're looking for high quality of artistic programming, appropriate training and qualifications, innovation, creativity, and uniqueness. So that is what the panelists are going to be looking at for artistic merit. We're looking at organization management. Is there formal artistic training? Is there formal practice in the discipline? Is there several years of productivity and achievement in professional venues? And this is very important. Is there contributions to the local community? Is there workshops, exhibiting locally, what have you? Community impact is also very important. We're going to want to make sure that this program benefits the Long Beach community. These are funds coming from the city of Long Beach. We want to make sure that the Long Beach community is benefiting from these programs. We also are going to be looking at artistic personnel that represents the diverse composition of the community or core audience or target audience. There's a question in the application that asks about your target audience. And so we're going to want to make sure that the personnel that's working on these projects is also representative of those communities that are being served. And there's a total of 30 possible points. So what does the application consist of? There's going to be an organization profile. And you'll also notice as you're filling out the application, there's an asterisk next to a lot of the questions. So we use the same questions as a lot of other local funders. And those questions that have an asterisk are the same questions to make the granting process easier for our grantees. We want to not have to come up with different questions. So a lot of those are the same questions that you're going to get on the LA County application, on the California Arts Council application. A lot of this is that you can copy and paste those asterisk questions on some of your other grant applications if you're filling those out. So we're asking for the organization profile, which is just general information about the organization and contact information, narrative information. This is going to be about the history of the organization, the mission, those type of things. We're going to ask about staff and artists. We want to know who's on staff so we can make sure that it's quality professionals. Also highlighting, if you remember in the evaluation criteria, we talked about staff and artists representing the community that's being served. So you're going to want to make sure you're highlighting that in that section. Who's the board of directors or steering committee members? Since we do know that some organizations applying are not, do not have their own 501c3, so it may be a steering committee instead of a board. So we want to know about the makeup of the board so that we can understand who is part of this organization. Also, the arts equity and cultural inclusion statement. So you'll look into more detail on what that is. How is the organization working towards equity and inclusion? The project budget. So if you look at the application, we go on to the online section of where the application is, you'll see a project budget form. You will download that form, fill in that form. So what we're looking is that particular form filled out, and there are notes attached to that form that tell you exactly how to fill out where everything goes. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We can clarify any of those line items. And then on top of the project budget, so this is the budget just for the project that you're applying for, not your organization budget, project budget. We also asked for the most recent Board of Directors approved organizational budget. So that is a separate, that will be the accountant or whoever works for your organization will have that Board of Directors approved budget. And so we will attach that. We also want the IRS tax determination letter or nonprofit certification letter. If you are applying with a fiscal sponsor, it would be the fiscal sponsor's tax determination letter. If you are applying with a fiscal sponsor, this question comes up a lot too, of whose board approved budget are we attaching? Most of the time it's going to be the fiscal sponsor's budget. It really depends on how the structure is of your organization. If you do have your own organizational budget that's approved, you can submit that. But if you're applying with a fiscal sponsor and it's really just, you just have a project budget, then you would do the fiscal sponsor's organizational budget. We're also looking for a letter of support for in-school proposals. So usually that's a letter from the principal stating, yes, this program is taking place at the school and it's been approved. That's only for programs happening in school. And then Sergio will go into more detail about artistic documentation and marketing materials. This is a very, very important part of the application, and panelists do spend a lot of time on that section of the application. And then this year, this is new. In the past, we have not asked community project grantees to fill out the data arts, but we will be requiring that moving forward. That this does not need to be filled out before the application, but if you are funded, we will be requiring all organizations funded to fill out the cultural data project. So the question in the application is just that you're agreeing to do that. So when you're working on the budget, what is not eligible expenses? So the Arts Council does not fund any travel expenses or out of town expenses, capital expenditures, including building equipment, land buildings, or construction. We do not fund fundraising events. And hospitality, we used to not fund at all. We have changed that to up to 5%. It cannot exceed 5% of the total grant award. So if we're granting a maximum, say around 5,000, the food and beverage costs cannot exceed 5% of that. So I would use that 5,000 number when you're calculating that. Trusts or endowments are not funded. Any type of debt reduction efforts or ongoing deficit operations. We also do not fund any programs that have religious or sectarian purposes or that are part of religious services. We do not fund any expenses that happen before the start of the grant period. So we don't fund anything that's happening before October 1st, 2024. And then any programs that aid or service political campaigns or political groups are not funded. We do require a dollar for dollar match for the community project grant. The way that this works is that you will be asked, if you receive the award in the contract, we will be asking for what that where that match is coming from. And that match can come from corporate or private contributions, county, state, federal government grants, or earned income. Essentially, the only thing that really can't match is in-kind and City of Long Beach funding. Because this funding is coming from City of Long Beach, we can't match with any Arts Council or City of Long Beach funding. Generally, most other forms of matching are allowable. At the end of the program, when you're submitting your final report, you will confirm where that match came from. We understand that sometimes when you're filling out the contract, maybe you're projecting that some of that match is going to come from a fundraising event, and maybe you didn't hit that amount. And by the end of the grant period, you will confirm what was actually used for the one-to-one match. And now Sergio is going to be talking a little bit more about artistic documentation.
Great, thank you, Lisa. So as Lisa has mentioned, the artistic documentation portion of the application is something that panelists definitely spend a lot of time in and definitely go into depth, especially if they see that high quality programming and relevance to what has been applied to. We want to make sure that everything that you actually insert for all the questions is actually reflected within your artistic documentation. We want to make sure that there's a variety of different programming that is actually reflective of the project that you're applying for. Or if this is a new project for your organization and you don't have any examples that could compare, go ahead and provide your strongest programming in order to actually demonstrate that the organization has done some programming in the past. And so to prepare everybody, we want to make sure that you understand the file and the file naming and how to actually include your samples within the document. So we are searching for a one PDF file to make it the easiest way to access all of the videos, the pictures, any written work, any marketing material. And this can be all done using Google Docs or Google Slides. These are the two free softwares that I would recommend using, as you are able to prepare your document in the manner that you would like, and it has the function to download the document as a PDF. Jude will be sharing out a sample of some artistic documentation that I prepared that features images, videos, audio, as well as some written work. As we see here, we would like all applicants to use the file naming structure here. So this pertains mostly to artists, but for organizations, we definitely want to make sure that you write the organization name underscore artistic documentation as example there. For me, it would be Vias underscore Sergio underscore artistic documentation. And if you are looking for any assistance on creating this artistic documentation, please make sure that you do contact us at least 2 weeks before the application deadline so that we could provide ample assistance and make sure that you are able to get your artistic documentation in on time. And so we would like that you do not send any of your original works if it is like a canvas, if that's something that came out of the project that you've done as an organization, any panels. So any physical works, please do not send to our office. Everything will be sent over as a digital file within that PDF. And do not send your only copy of your documented work. We want to make sure that if we do ask again for that documented work, that you are able to share it again, despite it being submitted through the artistic documentation. For visual and audio samples, we want to make sure that you number the samples that you would like the panelists to review, if there's a specific order that they should review so that they could get a chronological sense of the project, or they tell a story in the numbering that you would like, go ahead and write that down. And this doesn't just have to be like videos 1, 2, 3. It could be a video that you would want them to view first, an audio sample that you would like them to view second, and maybe an additional video that you would like them to view third. And please always make sure that all of your final works, any links that are linked, any videos that are embedded, that they are not private and that they do not require a password. That's a big hindrance that we've seen in the past, where applicants have submitted work and panelists are not able to actually access or get a sense of what the artistic documentation is because they're not able to see any of the work that was submitted. So that's when the applicants actually get docked some points, as the questions that were answered are not being able to be backed up by this evidence. As far as video go, we want to make sure that you embed your video as a hyperlink. And as mentioned, please make sure that that link is public and accessible to everybody. We have seen that people have shared Vimeo and YouTube links, and those are some of the links that work the best, as those are very widely accessible platforms. We want to make sure that you do not submit videos that are higher than 5 minutes. Panelists will be reviewing each work up to 5 minutes. And if there's a cutoff point in the video that you would like the panelists only to reach, please go ahead and specify those special playback instructions in the work sample underneath that actual particular sample. And this also pertains to any audio files. We want to make sure that they're clearly labeled, that you actually that you write in the description of, as an example here, start at 4 minutes and play for 2 minutes. Just so that panelists can get a sense of what they should actually be looking for, and they don't go running around looking at the artistic documentation if it's not in support of the actual application. So we want to make sure that all the files that you do submit are very relevant to the project, as well as your organization, and show that programming. And as mentioned, just go ahead and number those files in the order that you'd like them reviewed. We recommend that you only submit up to 10 images for this artistic documentation. Any more images than that will not get reviewed. So please go ahead and make sure that you select your strongest images that tell the story that you are looking to tell. File sizes for these images should be no larger than 72 dpi and 5 megabytes or smaller, because we want to make sure that the PDF is not a large 100 megabyte file and not easily reviewed by the panel. So please make sure that your images are more so web ready rather than print ready, just so that they're easily accessible. For publications, we want to make sure that you either link to where that publication is found. If it's a book and it can be accessed digitally, please go ahead and submit that. If you have publications in books and they're not available digitally, please go ahead and send a scan of the passage or passages that you would like the panelists to read. And also you could take a photo and embed it and include it as your sample, making sure that you denote where the reader should start, where they should end, and some descriptions about the artworks. As mentioned, please go ahead and save it as one PDF. We are only allowing one file to be submitted per application, just because in the past, when people have submitted various images, videos, and links, things have gotten convoluted. And we want to make sure that you have the ample amount of time as well as a fair chance of getting all your documentation reviewed. And I'll pass it all over to Lisa to go close us out.
Thank you, Sergio. So the applications are open now. You can, Jude put the link on our website of where to find the application. And the deadline is Friday, June 14th at 5 p.m. I want to be very clear that it's going to be cutting off at 5, not midnight. It's going to be cutting off at 5. And this is so that we can be available for any technical issues that happen on that day. So we will be here, hopefully try and answer questions if anything comes up. I do recommend submitting it before the deadline so that if things do come up, we can help out with that. And again, please reach out to us sooner rather than later for questions, as we'll likely have a lot of questions to answer closer to the deadline. And if you have any questions at all, you can always email us at grants@artslb.org. We're doing our best to keep up with that email and answer questions as quickly as possible. And if you want to reach out to any of us, myself, Director of Programs, Sergio, or Jude, we're here to assist. Also, the grants phone number is also listed on this slide, so feel free to take that down if you have questions. And that will conclude our presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and I'm going to open it up for any questions you may have. Feel free to put questions in the chat or raise your hand if you have a question. I guess we did a really good job presenting if there's no questions. Anybody?
I do.
Oh, I see Lisette, you have a question?
Yes, I joined the other workshop of the fellowship. Can this be combined, or I didn't catch that, or they're separate?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. You can only apply to one grant category, so you cannot apply to the fellowship and community projects. So you'll need to choose which application you want to apply for and which one best fits you. So if you're an individual artist, typically that's the fellowship. If it's a project that you're doing and you're an organization, it would be the community project grant. So usually there's a pretty clear distinction. Sometimes it can be a little bit murky depending on how people's practice are, but you'll need to make that decision of which grant best fits with what you're doing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, and the fellowship one deadline is the same date, right?
Same date, correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I see Matthew has also raised their hand. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of a similar question. So basically we've got a financial sponsor. It's a nonprofit. They also do some art related work. So would we have to submit a single one, or can we submit with our collective with them as our sponsor and have the sponsor also do a request individual?
That is going to be tricky because that seems like it's to the same organization applying. So I would say no, it would have to be one or the other applying.
Okay. Thank you.
Maggie? has her hand up.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, I'm driving and trying to do it all at the same time. So sorry for my camera being off, and hi, Lisa. I just wanted to ask more information about the Board of Directors portion of the application. So I would be applying with the fiscal sponsor for that Board of Directors section. Would that describe the Board of Directors of the fiscal sponsor? Or would it be my organization?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we said board of directors or steering committee. So we really want it to be focused on mostly the organization rather than the fiscal sponsor if possible. So if there's a committee that is part of this organization, I would list the steering committee instead of the fiscal sponsors board.
Okay, all right. And then I just was wondering if you could give more examples of the qualified artist requirement as well.
So artists that have received significant recognition for their work or have formal training or experience, or if you're doing programs, say in schools, professional teaching artists that have those credentials would be examples of what we're looking for. So critical recognition or years of experience, those type of things.
Thank you.
And then I see up close and classical has a question as well.
Yeah, I saw them raise their hands, but I believe they turned their video off right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, we could take your question.
I technical issues.
If you want to put it in the chat too, if you want to type it in the chat, if that's easier. We're unable to hear you, so if you'd like to put your question in the chat, or we can circle back. Does anybody else have questions at this time? Again, if anything comes up, you can always email the grants@artslb.org. That's the best way to get questions answered. If anything comes up after this workshop, you may think of something that you didn't think to ask here. Feel free to shoot us an email and we're happy to answer that. And hopefully we answered most of your questions. Jude did put in the chat a sample of artistic documentation. We encourage you to download that and take a look at what a sample might look like. We're also working on a specific video to really focus on artistic documentation and some helpful tips on how to resize it so that it fits in those requirements and how to do all that. So we'll be sending out a video to everyone after this with that sample and also with this video recording. So you'll have that and the video of more detail about artistic documentation. Last chance for any questions if anybody has anything that they want to ask. Well, we want to thank everybody for taking the time today to join us. Oh, did I hear?
Yeah, Lisa has a question.
All right.
Yes, this is, outside this conversation, but for the micro grant, would there be workshops for that as well?
We will be doing workshops for our next fiscal year. So the deadline for this last cycle is today. So we're obviously not going to be having any workshops for that micro grant. But as we come into the new fiscal year, we're definitely going to be doing a lot of technical assistance workshops for microgrants, including going into community spaces and talking about the microgrant. So we're going to be definitely doing more focus on that this next fiscal year.
Okay, great. I'll keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much.
And just make sure you're signed up for our newsletter and following us on social media to make sure you get the most up-to-date information about grant opportunities, events that we're having, and these type of workshops as well. So hopefully everybody's on our newsletter and following us on social media.
And I also do want to share that if you're an artist or have artists in your organization, to have them sign up for our artist registry. It is free to sign up. It is basically like a digital business card that artists can go ahead and share their link out with images that are already embedded in the web page and access to any other links and numbers and emails that they would like to share. We also share out this registry with any partners or anybody who's actually looking to hire any artists. We share that list. And this year, for our Professional Artist Fellowship, we have included the category of culinary arts. So we also want to make sure that a lot of culinary artists are able to register for this artist registry. And so if you know any new culinary artists that have had any experience for the past 3 years, we want to make sure that they also are aware of the Professional Artist Fellowship.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We will be sending out the video recording and those other documents as well.
Yes, thank you, everybody.